Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Massive drama down under today at the Australian Grand Prix with Logan Sargeant withdrawn by his own team Williams after Alex Albon crashed his car during the first free practice session. So much reaction to this from Sargeant and from around the community and for understandable reasons at the clear unfairness of this situation. But James Vowles, team principal, has come up with now a video to explain, as we shall look at in the coming minutes, why he definitely feels like this is the correct decision. What do you guys think about it in the comments below? Very much intrigued to your thoughts down there. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. So today, practice got underway. Lots of drivers struggling here. Off into the gravel. Lots of excursions here from Fernando Alonso. Even from, well, not even from, the Mercedes was a bit of a handful today. Certainly in the second practice session. But even Max Verstappen was going off track as well. And they had various moments. I'll look at the numbers here in a second. We shall certainly as well look at the long run data, as we like to hear on the channel, because that was very telling. It really feels like we may have a race in our hands this weekend, as we saw back in 2022 when Charles Leclerc dominated the weekends. That was the case on the Friday. Just to show from the Mercedes as well, this is going through the far chicane of turn 9-10, I think it is. And this is George Russell getting a mega snap of oversteer. It is quite clear that yes, Mercedes have tried to make changes, but the stability of the rear of the car in the high-speed corners is absolutely still a problem. And this is a great stay from Russell here to actually keep it on the track, because he very easily could have been in that wall and Mercedes might have required their spare chassis, of which they do have one. A certain team, though, does not. These were the FP1 results, and honestly, you look at this, you think, oh my god, we're going to have a banger weekend. But not representative conditions during FP1 of what it's going to be like, and the times dropped substantially from FP1 to FP2, and it was disrupted by the red flag that we shall see in a second. Norris, though, tops the lot. Then Max Verstappen, then George Russell, then Charles Leclerc within 0.03 of a second. Pretty remarkable. So lots of cars up there. Even Yuki here was P5. FP2 though looked like this. Charles Leclerc dominated the session with a 1:17.2. 0.4 back was Max Verstappen in seconds. Then Carlos Sainz, of course, who was a fair bit off the pace, understandably, given he's recovering, but he says, like, he's getting better and better, getting stronger and stronger. He is going to be in the car for the weekend. Russell was P6 in Mercedes, taking a bit of a step back there with the other guy stepping forward. We've seen that before so far this season. Lots of discussion on this from Mercedes, we'll see here in a second. Hamilton, by the way, had a stinker of a session, and that was because Mercedes decided to make substantial changes to his car for the second practice session that they thought might be the silver bullet, as they keep describing. But clearly they weren't, and as Hamilton says, I don't feel great. We just had one of the worst sessions that I've probably had in a very long time. FP1 though, so it's not all negative for Mercedes. They've made some progress, but what they did in FP2 with Hamilton clearly shows that they just don't understand their car. They just don't understand still quite what is going on. FP1 generally felt quite good. The car actually felt the best it's ever felt in FP1. So far this season, that was the happiest that Hamilton was. So if they can get back to that, fair enough. But we've seen so far this season, Mercedes starting quite well in free practice sessions and then falling backwards as the other teams unlock their performance. Then it just got worse and worse. We made some big changes into FP2 and yeah, it was tough. Andrew Chauvelin says this: we've made changes to improve the high-speed cornering after Saudi and reduce the bouncing. They seem to be a good step in the right direction. The car was feeling quite good. Now, Chauvelin didn't drive it, but that was the feedback he got from the drivers. Unfortunately, FP2 wasn't as strong. I mean, that's a bit of an understatement. Lewis felt like we'd gone the wrong direction with the changes. Frustratingly, they weren't quick to unwind, so he had to live with that throughout the session. George found the windy conditions a bit trickier, as we saw over the last couple of minutes, and Toto says they've tried some experiments, right, Mercedes? They've designed these experiments over the last couple of weeks to try and figure out why they didn't have the high-speed performance their simulation said. We looked at some analysis yesterday that says that Mercedes' car in the simulator is a second faster than it is on track, which is exactly what Mercedes said back in 2022, if you guys remember, when that Zero Pod car was meant to be a second faster than they actually were. So here we are 2 years later, and Mercedes still don't have their heads around the porpoising, bouncing, ground effect type stuff that these cars still deal with, even if it's not as obvious nowadays as it was back with the W13. In the second session, we've gone through a really dramatic setup change on Lewis, and that has massively backfired. So they clearly still don't quite understand what is going on, but maybe there's some positives to take away from today. To say that I'm frustrated wouldn't be the truth. We are frustrated because we're trying so much in all directions, but don't seem to find that silver bullet yet, which helps us get to the right direction. And Gary Anderson said in his analysis the other day, look, Toto, the silver bullet doesn't exist. The car's just slow. You're not going to be able to do, one magic change and it's going to fix the car. There's a fundamental problem here. Mercedes maybe don't want to admit there's a fundamental problem, or maybe there isn't, and they actually can find a silver bullet in their setup. But the more practice sessions that go by without finding it, it's a bit of a challenge. They've made some progress possibly in FP1. He says they're going to get on top of things, and he also said that, they've got to focus on fixing their car before they start to try and think about getting Max Verstappen in that car for next season. But Ferrari were the strongest team, certainly in the hands of Charles Leclerc. Favourite for pole, here says Giuliano de Kessa, and the numbers actually back that up. They were the fastest just about on the race simulations, or the qualifying simulations. They were fastest by quite some margin on the race simulations. Now, these data, they're not so all-encompassing. There's not that many laps that are actually done here in the long runs. There were a couple of outliers as well for Leclerc, who ran into traffic or whatever the case was. But these were the overall numbers. Leclerc was on a 1:22.9 on the medium tyre over the laps they did, which was faster than anybody else could do by quite some way, actually. The McLaren looked pretty good. The Red Bull of Max Verstappen on the medium, he was further back, 23.5, 23.9, 23.0, 24.5, like kind of all over the place a little bit. Struggling for balance, and when you see Max put in these just mesmerizingly consistent lap times, that's when the car's working extremely well. When it isn't, every driver is going to struggle to get the consistency, and that was the case with Max today. If you actually look at the data on the long runs, Ferrari had the most promising data here. There's debate on fuel loads, on engine modes, and all these other things, and Helmut Marko actually said after the fact that, he reckons they were using full power in their qualifying runs. Maybe that wasn't the case, though, I'm sure that wasn't the case in the long runs. And also, would Ferrari be using full power? Just seems rather doubtful to me. What's the point? Okay, sure, Red Bull have probably looked at the GPS data, and Helmut Marko seems to believe that Ferrari are on full power, so therefore there's not much to worry about. But I don't know, it seems kind of doubtful to me. But he does admit that the long run was impressive and Red Bull have work to do with this setup. Even Max Verstappen said that he's not too concerned about Ferrari's pace because they've got more to do from their side. But he says, Ferrari is fast. I think from our side, there are a few more things we can fine-tune. Nothing crazy, nothing worrying. We just need to fine-tune the car. So in all likelihood, Red Bull will turn up tomorrow in FP1 and they'll have, or FP3, sorry, they'll have an absolute rocket ship again. But today definitely seems like Ferrari have a chance this weekend. And Ferrari have said themselves that their race pace this year is actually better than their qualifying pace with respect to Red Bull, right? Like last couple of years, they've been a rapid car in qualifying, but in the race it falls away from them. This year they've tried to get the opposite result. And if that's true, and they were to get pole, and Charles Leclerc's been on the front row for the last how many races? 7, 8 races in a row. If that continues, I think there's a chance this weekend. Speaking of Helmut Marko, just quickly before we discuss the Albon drama, he did actually have a few words to say on Yuki and Daniel Ricciardo. Basically says they're both too slow. There's a lot at stake for Tsunoda and Ricciardo. Both might be hoping for a Red Bull seat, and one should be well ahead of the other. So far, Ricciardo is a bit behind, but let's put it this way, Yuki's qualifying speed is okay, but in the race, both are too slow. So Helmut Marko, I don't know if he maybe feels like the internal drama at Red Bull has calmed down somewhat, so he's definitely starting to talk to the media again a fair bit, but pretty much roasts both of those guys and says, you got to be faster, even if the car isn't great. One car not in great shape, though, is Alex Albon's chassis. Here he is, coming out of turn 6-7, going wide, binning it into this wall, coming across to the other side of the track, binning it into this wall, launching debris everywhere, causing a red flag, and destroying the chassis. Thankfully, from a safety perspective, Albon's all okay, out of the car, no problems at all, so good stuff on that part. And to know that many people probably looked at this image and thought, oh my god, Williams in the wall, Sargeant's done it again. But no, Sargeant had not done it again. Yes, he was in the gravel, he had a bit of a spin, or lost control a little bit, but nonetheless, Sargeant kept it out of the wall today, Albon didn't. Reminiscent, it's got to be said, of what happened at this track last year. Albon was running P6, let's not forget, at last year's Australian Grand Prix. This is a circuit where the Williams tends to work quite well. He got a point in 2022, right? He had that crazy long stint on the hards, then secured a point in that Grand Prix. He should have had solid points last year, but he binned it on lap 7 at this same corner complex where he binned it yesterday. And this is one of the reasons why you might think, well, has Albon really earned or deserves the opportunity to take Logan's car away from him? Because, well, last year he put it in the wall at this track, and what's to say that Albon doesn't go to FP3 or to qualifying or to the race for the rest of the weekend and bins the car again. Well, there's something to be said on that. But regardless, Williams clearly feel this is the correct decision, although I'm sure many in the community don't feel that way. So Williams say further to his accident he won't participate in FP2, so he loses that session entirely. And also this is the other point on Alex replacing Logan, that Sargeant has had those couple of sessions, right? He drove in FP2, he drove in FP1, Alex crashed in FP1, didn't drive FP2, so you know, Logan has more experience this weekend, more track time this weekend than Albon does, but still, they're making the decision. So then the discussion started to come through here from Toby Gruner and AMUS that actually Williams don't have a spare chassis at the track. This is a Williams problem, fundamentally, and if you guys have seen the discussion over the last few days that Williams have been designing their cars for years in Microsoft Excel, they don't have a good management system. It's been an absolute mess at their factory. They're still living like 20 years in the past. Over this past winter, James Vowles, Pat Fry, they said, all right, this is going to be painful, but we are going to go through this transitionary period now. We're going to update the systems. We're going to actually move into the 21st century in terms of car design, and that was going to be painful. Their car was very late as a result. Their car was basically just a bunch of parts that were just abandoned all over the factory in January. They had to piece things together. They got the car ready last minute, and the car isn't actually that bad. It's not great, but it's not terrible, to be fair, this year's Williams, compared to where they might have thought they could be, especially because Alpine obviously have taken a big step backwards. And clearly they're hopeful of a good championship battle and potentially getting some points here in Australia, because historically there would be a decent chance for them to do exactly that. But because of all these problems, they don't have a spare chassis. They certainly don't have one here in Australia. Now this is pretty unacceptable, as James Vowles admits, and embarrassing for a Formula 1 team to have this circumstance happen. I don't really know the last time that this happens, when a driver crashes out and because they have no spare car, they swap the drivers. And this is what Toby said, that yeah, it's realistically possible that they could swap the drivers. And then we started to get these images coming out of Alex Albon's garage at the track and then Logan Sargeant's garage at the track, and well, the car is not in this garage, it's in this garage, the only remaining car of course, and that's when we got the official confirmation from Williams that Albon will race in Sargeant's car this weekend. Highly controversial circumstance. Let's look at some of the immediate discussion here from the respective parties, and then we can talk about whether this is actually a good or a bad idea. So James Vowles says, hugely disappointed with the damage. Not having a spare chassis is a reflection on how behind they were during the winter, and you know, they can't allow this to happen again, basically. Very difficult decision to be made. Logan should not have to suffer from a mistake that he did not make, but every race counts when the midfield is tighter than ever, and we have made the call based on our best potential to score points this weekend, i.e. Albon is faster. We can't thank Logan enough for his graceful acceptance. I'm not sure he would have been especially graceful in his acceptance, but I mean, look, it's no doubt tough for everybody involved. Albon says that he wouldn't have never wanted anything like this to be happening. Logan's been a consummate professional. I think what's really more interesting here is Logan's response, and every response here gets somewhat shorter and shorter. This is the hardest moment I can remember in my career, and it's absolutely not easy, but I'm here for the team, etc., etc. So this is a pretty crazy circumstance. I just wanted to share what James Vowles had to say, because they actually felt the need here, Williams, to come out, I've got this on 2xv there, to come out with an explanation video from Vowles on why this decision was made. Just expanding really on what he said in that statement, but making it quite clear that he believes this is the right call.
We don't have a spare chassis here in Melbourne with us. As a result of the work that took place across the winter, we stressed the organisation to the absolute limit. We pushed everything as far as it could do. And what it meant as a result of that is, off the back end of being very late on some of the production, the spare chassis started to move backwards. No team plans to come to an event without a spare chassis. In doing so, you create risk. In the absolute best case, it's uncomfortable. And in the worst case, one of the cars is not racing. And that's the situation we face today. We have to ensure that we never, ever put ourselves in that situation again going forward in the future. We are here to go racing, and to only have one car here on Saturday and Sunday simply isn't what we're built to do. I've made the decision for Logan not to be racing this weekend, and for Alex to take the chassis and continue on behalf of Williams racing on Saturday and Sunday. It's one of the hardest decisions I've made so far whilst here in this organisation. The midfield is so incredibly tight that a point or two or more may make the difference at the end of the season between being 10th or being 6th. The spread of our cars at the moment is milliseconds. And as much as it pains me to see a driver that through no fault of their own won't be racing on Sunday, I have to prioritise the team above all else. Logan has been tremendous. He's here to support the team in this regard. He's clearly very much hurting as a result of this decision, but equally strong in as much as he knows that the team above all else is the priority. What I can say is this: the chassis will be back in the UK as quick as we can possibly make it, and will be repaired such that we're able to race again in Japan with 2 cars.
So this is brutal, right? I mean, this is unfair, but life isn't fair. And this is the reality of things. I'm sure on some sense Logan Sargeant understands this. It's just really difficult for what it means from the Williams side and what they think about Sargeant. I wouldn't precisely say it's a vote of no confidence in Sargeant. It's merely a vote that they have far more confidence in Albon than they do in Logan Sargeant. For all the talk from Williams last year that, yep, we're really committed to Logan, we believe he's got what it takes going forwards, to make this decision is a pretty bad indictment on him, really, or at least on their opinion of Sargeant. I don't rate Sargeant either. I'll be straight up. I think he shouldn't have got the seat again this year. But he did, and Williams said they were committed to him. If there was any weekend to give Sargeant the chance to prove himself, this is the weekend. You say to Logan, hey, look, Albon's crashed his car. We could put him in your car. We're not going to, though. You've done 2 practice sessions. You've done a solid job so far. Let's see what you got. You know, the pressure's on you, Logan. All our eggs are in your basket. Let's see what you got. I'm sure Sargeant would have at least tried to rise to the opportunity. And if you didn't deliver, fair enough. But, you know, maybe you want to give him the chance in that circumstance to do so and to prove his worth to the team. By not even giving him the opportunity to do so and just restricting him from racing entirely, taking him out of the car, it just sends a difficult message to Sargeant as to what's going to happen at the end of the year. And maybe, to be honest, this says to me that Sargeant is for sure gone. I think the decision is made. My feeling is that Antonelli will drive in the Williams next year, probably not in the Mercedes. I guess we'll see on that. But the feeling is that Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes Junior, he actually was P2, I believe, in qualifying for Formula 2 this weekend, which was particularly impressive for him because Behrman actually was not even in the top 10. So that was impressive. The understanding is that Wolff and Vowles have already discussed, Antonelli in the car. I feel like it's a done deal that Sargeant is gone, and I feel like this is indicative as to why. But at the same time, if I was Vowles, would I make this call? Probably yes. I think it's probably the right decision, because if you are going to try and get as many points as you can, this is the most viable way to do so. Albon is the better driver. If there is a chance of points, of which every point is valuable, I think that Albon is the most likely to deliver it. I don't begrudge Vowles' decision if you believe, as I do, that Sargeant is already gone and the decision has effectively been made at some point. Just because if you think that Sargeant might be a driver you want to keep next season, then doing this thing just destroys his confidence. Let's be real. This isn't good for Logan. He knows now what the situation is at Williams. He probably already knew in some extent, but it's going to be tough to take, and it's going to be a big slight to his confidence going forwards. They've taken him out of the car. Maybe for some drivers that would fire him up. That'd be like, oh my God, these guys, they don't believe in me, and maybe understandably, so I'm going to try and rise to the occasion going forwards. There's also, I guess, the question of fairness, right? Because I do feel bad for Logan in this case, but I do feel like Alex Albon has earned the opportunity to get this drive in this particular situation. He has dominated Logan over the last couple of years. Logan, as unfair as it is, I'm not sure has earned the chance. Not even the chance. He probably should be allowed to drive his own car, but just given the circumstance and what Williams are, the position they find themselves in, Albon has earned the right to this, I would say, in some sense. And I don't think Logan has. But I don't disagree with the statements around that, for all the faith and confidence that Williams are apparently showing in Sargeant, it clearly doesn't really exist. And it was maybe all just good PR, or at least trying to get good PR. So it's tough for all parties. I don't know what you guys think in the comment section below. I think Tomo made an interesting analysis on it where he said, yeah, this might be a negative for the overall team vibes and culture and chemistry and all these other factors going forwards. And that's quite possibly true. But if Sargeant is already going to be gone, then frankly it doesn't matter, and you've got to do what's best for the team potentially. So a difficult decision from Vowles. He believes it's the right one. I definitely see the merits both ways. I think if I was Vowles, I would have probably done the same thing, as harsh as it sounds. But I'm very much intrigued to your perspective in the comment section below. So Alex Albon will drive the car for the rest of the weekends. As I say, if he crashes it at FP3, can you imagine if he crashes Sargeant's car as well? That would be incredible drama. I'm sure that, well, Netflix, right, they're looking very closely at this story because this is like a perfect Drive to Survive kind of story, right, when you get these kind of intra-team conflicts. But yeah, intrigued to your perspective in the cosplay. I say intrigued, by the way. Maybe I say it wrong. People don't really understand what I say when I say intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I've said it for ages. I don't really know why I say it, but I say it, so I'm going to keep saying it probably. But yeah, hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Loads of new subs yesterday as well. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.